Do you want your animations to look like they belong on live TV? In the last video, we built 4 simple but effective broadcast transition camera moves. In this one, we're taking those camera moves up a notch. We will be upgrading them into intermediate level transitions, subtle rotations, layered motion, and a layer of realism that will instantly level up your work. Let's go ahead and hop right into it. In part 1, everything was simple, clean, foundational. In part 2, we're going to be adding sophistication, secondary axis motion, that rotational nuance, and of course my favorite, focal length animation. The details that make a broadcast transition feel alive instead of mechanical. So let's go ahead and hop into Cinema 4D. Alrighty, so we're starting exactly where part 1 ended. If you haven't watched that, go check it out because everything in here is built originally off those 4 moves. If you want, you can pick this file up on the Gumroad, or you can go follow that tutorial step by step. So let's go ahead and hop into the arc camera, and I'm just going to play it here. We can see that it is the left to right arc moving on that spline system right here. What I'm also going to do is while I'm working on one of them, I'm going to mute the other ones by just double clicking these buttons up here. That's going to turn them red and that's going to turn them off. I know I don't need to click both, but I just like clicking both. Now we can kind of see what's going on here with this animation from a bird's eye view. We have this spline here and we're starting on the left side, obviously going super fast. We're whipping over and ending up on the right side pretty fast too, but the holding move is in the middle here. Obviously, the reason why this is pretty dynamic is because we're getting all of this rotation work for free. So that perfect track is like something that you can do in 3D really fast. If I were to add another axis of animation to enhance this, the first thing I'm going to on this arc animation is the focal length. So right now our focal length is on 35. I just want to show you by taking this slider all the way down what the focal length does when it's at a low number and what it does when it's at a high number. High numbers flatten out the perspective and low numbers widen the perspective. That's why a fisheye lens would be a low number, and a long lens across maybe a football field, someone taking a photo across a football field, that's gonna be a long lens, high number. Telephoto, 200mm lens. What this is basically doing is it's flattening the perspective and then it's opening the perspective. So what you'll find when you actually animate this value, if you place a keyframe at the beginning and the end of the animation, we open up this timeline F curve here. I'm going to drag this down below here and just put this on object mode so we're only focusing on this animation. As you can see, I placed a keyframe at the start and the end, but I didn't do anything inside of it because I want to control that with the actual Bezier handles right here. All I did to do that is I just selected. If my face cam gets in the way, you can just see here, I just selected this and then you can pull these curves. So basically that's going to make a perfect arc. If we drag the other one, and basically what we can do is either pop this up or down, and what it's going to do is it's almost going to open up our animation a little bit more on the arc to make it a little bit more dynamic. It's going to feel like an inflating feeling. And as we scroll down, we can just pull this out and make it a little bit more impactful. You'll see the numbers on the left side right here. Obviously this is going to be our widest here. And we'll just begin to tweak this until sort of like where it's at. After tweaking with this a little bit, I realized that I wanted to do more of a pinch zoom effect with the focal length. I think it's important to leave this stuff into videos too. Like I started off probably wanting more of like an arc snappy feeling at both ends of it. But what I realized after animating a little bit of this was that that was already happening from the animation that was on the spline. So the fact that it was whipping around so fast already right here makes me think that the second layer of animation should actually accent. So once it's done with its beat of energy here, the second layer of this animation using this focal length to flatten the view and pinch zoom, it almost gave it its own time to shine. As you can see here, we pull out and then we pinch in and then we pull out. So here's what it looks like when it is in third eye view. Here's what it looks like when it is inside the camera. And I'm gonna go ahead and title this VO2 and we are going to move to the next one. Alrighty, moving on to the zoom or the dolly camera. I'm gonna go ahead and play what we have in V1. Obviously, it's just a simple snap, hold, and snap out. You can see that right here. What I want to do to this animation is essentially just add in a little bit of B rotation. Now that could be called Z rotation as well, but it's going to be this keyframe that we're going to click right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a little bit off, let's say 5 degrees off to the left. And when it comes all the way inside, I'm going to change this value to +5. So we're actually getting that left to right. And what it's actually going to get out of the bucket isn't really what I want. I do want it to snap with it, but this doesn't necessarily not work. It just depends on what you need. Obviously, I'm a fiend for that snapping in and out. So we're going to take these handles and we're just going to crank them like that. Now that's going to snap our camera to pause in the middle and nothing's really happening in the middle. So this is exactly what was happening before in our other animation. It felt like the beginning had its time to shine and we need more animation to show up in the middle to sort of help the dynamic flow of a multi-beat camera move. So something that I don't do too often but does have its placement is if you actually press this linear button up here when you have all your keyframes selected, you can turn this into a linear camera move. So if I actually have snappy animation going on one axis, sometimes putting a linear animation graph on another axis is very cinematic. Let's go ahead and see if that is applied and that helps the moving hold at all. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It is adding a lot more dynamic value. If you want, you could probably crank this up even more if you wanted to emphasize a Dutch angle to create an uneasy feeling. But what I'm going to do to actually make sure that we're differentiating that Dutch angle versus just this B animation is I'm going to actually lessen these values to about -3 to +3. So we're just animating 6 degrees of axis. That way, it's almost something that you feel rather than you see, contrary to the first one that we did. Honestly, I really like how that breathes. I like how it breathes. I'm liking how it's feeling. Now I'm going to go ahead and name these VO2 and we're going to jump on to the next camera move. Alrighty, what's up next is the X pan. This is coming from the left side of the frame and it's leaving on the right side of the frame. Similar to the arc, which was our first camera move, but this camera animation is moving on a straight line and is not parented to the object or the figure. So this animation, honestly, it's pretty snappy, and what we want to do is actually a little bit different than the previous two animations. I actually just want to play into the realism of how someone holding the camera would do this transition. They would have a little bit more of a flick of the rotation. Obviously that rotation would be the H rotation right here. So using this, we're just going to animate this the same way we've been doing. And we're going to add a little bit more realism by adding another axis of animation here. So the first keyframe, I'm actually going to flick away from the camera. And remember, everything grayed out here is off camera. This is not on camera. The border starts right here. We're in a 16:9 frame. So starting that keyframe off at 5 degrees, we're going to end it at -5 degrees. Press that keyframe. If we click our rotation here and we just frame this all up, us making this change is actually really not even going to be seen because it's so snappy, but it's going to be felt more or less. The actual parallax that's happening here is going to be slightly different, and you're really only going to see it from the bird's eye view. Now with this graph here, you can see that every time I push it up, it's going to the left. So if I really wanted to crank it, it could really be whipping in from the left side. But you want to remember that when it goes here, we want to make sure that it lines up with this central 0 so everything's squared up as possible because there's not a target on it. Now, contrary to the other animations that we were doing, the first axis of animation had its point to shine and it kind of wanted a second beat. But for this one, we're kind of playing into the one axis. And as you can see, we're just getting a little bit different of a parallax effect by whipping it across here. So we're playing into this one axis of X, but what we can do is sort of know that it doesn't need to be seen, it could be felt. it's okay to be felt for some of these animations, as long as it doesn't pull us out of the intended meaning of the animation. We only want to add, we'd never want to subtract. We're only trying to add attention, not subtract people's attention. Take people out of it is not the goal. Bring people into it by more stuff happening or interesting stuff. Effective one thing is what we want. Right here, we're just sort of making this one axis right here pretty effective. And it honestly looks a little bit different here. I like it. It feels scroll wheelie, feels like it's rotating around the camera almost. It's giving this unique feel that's different than the arc, which rotates around it. This feels like the actual figures rotating around it, because technically that is what the field of view would be inferring. As this whips around, it almost fake copies having a spline system be in a circle here and the camera pointed out. That's why that spline system that we did on the first time was so valuable, because it just does the rotation animation for you. Right here, we're doing it basically manually. That is also why it is so important to line this part up with 0 when you want that moving hold to register whatever you have your camera in front of. But I like how this came out, so we're gonna name everything to VO2 and move on to the Y-pan, the final animation. Alrighty, so we are looking at the Y-pan animation here, and we are looking at a top to bottom animation, starting at the head and ending at the feet. We are going to do exactly what we did with the other animation, going left to right. Now we are gonna go up to down. We're gonna take this P value here, and we're gonna set our first keyframe. We're gonna set our last keyframe, and we're gonna make sure that up is the up value. Okay, cool. So we'll just Command Z to go back there, and we're gonna set up, let's just go -15 in the air. Click this, pull up our graph here, and at the ending part, let's just go -15. We ended up ramping up the other animation, so why not this one? Obviously, let's go ahead and select all these keyframes here and pull our handles. Let's crank this so that we get a little bit of this ramp ending right at 0. So our focus is going to be good. Now make sure if you pull these handles too far, you'll actually get something going too below. So it'll kind of like ping pong back. So you got to make sure that these handles never go below the other anchor point. So like this anchor point here, make sure that the other handle on the other side of my face cam is kind of in front of it, but this handle over here, just make sure it doesn't go higher than that over there, because then it'll create this wonky little ping pong thing. So if you zoom in, you'll kind of see, okay, boom, it doesn't ping pong, but you want it right at that 0 line. Now we got this animation playing here, and it's definitely going unnoticed, so we can probably crank up how much it's rotating up. And then that means we also have to crank up the Bezier handle right here to match it flying to 0 in time. Because you can quickly see as you increase the value, it'll sort of just floatily go past it, and we don't have that moving hold. So let me just go ahead and tweak this real quick. All right, so what's happening here is like the moving hold is a little bit hard to register. So I'm gonna actually establish a middle keyframe here. I'm gonna put it at 0. This is gonna mess up our animation where we're at. But essentially we just need to obey the central focus of the moving hold. So I'm going to select these, make sure our Bezier handles aren't higher than the other side. And instead of this being so straight off, I'm going to flatten this middle hold. Now, if this goes completely flat, then it's just going to be completely still. So we still want that movement, but now we have more control over how flat it's getting and when it's getting that flat. All right, so we have the animation here, but I want to go ahead and do a little cheat thing that I like to do to add a little bit more noticeability for the whip down. I'm going to take our Y animation here and put it down 80. Then I'm going to raise up here on the animation of this rotation, just about 2 to 3 degrees of axis. That's going to make it feel like it's like pointing up at it a little bit more. And I just realized I just want to push it a little bit more so that when we drop down here, we clearly see that it's pointing up. I think what we're actually going to do too is offset these so that it kind of hits the Y animation here. And then as we kind of roll through, we roll through the rotation whipping down. I can tell this one is going to be probably the most subtle out of all of the camera animations we've done here. Alrighty, so what we ended up doing after all that tweaking is offsetting the landing so that the Y animation lands, and then there actually is a little bit of a ping pong overshoot here we're doing by making the handles longer than the landing point. So it's actually going down, but we're having a little bit of an overlap and follow through happen. And I know I said I actually wasn't going to do it, but I figured it actually gives a little bit of an anticipation, which is an animation principle, to actually go and complete the rotation down. It actually contextualizes the rotation by letting us know that there is a rotation happening here, because when it hits and it follows through up and then back down, we're doing that anticipation principle. So this is what we're looking at for the final. Alrighty, I'm really liking how that's looking. It's very bouncy, it's a little bit more fun, and it adds another animation principle into this pack. Now I'm going to take this last animation and name it V2. We got the Y pan V2, and that is going to wrap up this camera animation video. If you downloaded the first file, you know exactly where to find this one. V2 is now up on my Gumroad. Everything built in part 1 and also everything we built here to make a part 2. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. You're a GOAT. Go make sure to cop a motion hat at motiondirective.com/shop. Join the Motion Maniacs. You already know it's a movement. If you got this far in the video, you're a GOAT. Obviously, you want to get better, so I wish the best of luck to you, and I hope you found this video helpful. Turn on those post notifications so you never miss a new video. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.